It's a bull. Good morning. Hey, what's up? This is Brian Kuzmar with Commercial Rare Coins and Precious Metals in a beautiful and cool Lauderdale by the Sea. I think our temperatures in the low 70s and the high 60s. Man, it's great to have this time of year back again, that's for sure. Very pleasant. Can turn the AC off, even open the windows. Well, got the live coral cam down in Miami, and man, look at that colorful fellow right there. I think that's a triggerfish of sorts, and they eat. Man, don't get your fingers near those mouths; they'll take your finger right off. And they're tiny little fish as well. I think they eat corals and algae and stuff like that. You can see them pecking off, like this guy, pecking off the corals there, all the algae. Well, here, this is not a biology show on fish. Uh, and let's move into spot prices here. Well, the coin said bull, and hey, we have a bull market, obviously. We've been in a bull market since 2016. If you watched my video yesterday, let me do a quick update. I backed off a little bit. Let me just expand that a little bit here, and let's talk about what the prices have done. Currently, it's 1827.91, up $3. 1819 being the low on silver overnight since New York closed yesterday, and the high of 1830.94. We just saw that a few minutes ago before I refreshed my screen. Silver 24.30 with a high at 24.50. Currently sitting at 24.37. And we're not too far off from that high, a little bit low from yesterday's opening, about down 10 cents. And platinum hanging on to that mid 60s level. Looks like it's only $1.99 off from its high as well. Let's take a look at the screen I did not open up this morning, and 24-hour gold chart, and let's kind of see when this action happened with gold. I suspect we're going to see similar type of activity that we've been discussing here for a while, which is 24-hour gold chart, which is most of the action in precious metals seems to be happening right in the New York opening time. And voila, here we go. Take a look at this. Same thing. Markets kind of, let's see, there's the close, last close. There's yesterday's close right there. Sorry about that. And you can see all the activity. New York, wham, 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 kind of continued through the day, drifted its way upward, which is unusual because mostly for the last month or so, again, this up and down activity, this crazy volatility has been happening between, again, New York opening at 8:20 in the morning and is ending about noontime typically, and sometimes before noon. But yesterday and the day before, I believe on Friday, it did extend out through the day where we've seen it slowly rise like we did right here on yesterday's close. Again, same action this morning. Look at that, very volatile on the upside and the downside early on, and then it kind of flattens out for the rest of the day. But again, Friday and Saturday, it didn't just flatten out. It seemed to steadily kind of just tick its way up a little bit at a time. Looked healthy to me. Let's take a look at the spot 24-hour chart for silver, 24-hour chart. And we're going to just see the same thing, but might as well look. 24-hour chart, silver, and let's take a look here. And I like to go down to Kitco does that nice little chart with the three lines. They have three 24-hour spot prices. Again, same exact thing. Look at this choppy action. That was yesterday's action right there, 10 to 4. And look at that, slowly, even past the noontime market, silver's continued to make some higher highs there, which is really cool. So we're seeing higher highs and higher lows with gold and silver right now. Again, take a look at this choppy action. There's what's happening at the moment. Morning opens up, same thing as yesterday, same thing we've been seeing for a month. I'd sure be curious. I'm not smart enough to do it. I'd be sure curious to know what is who and what sales and how much and who's the largest seller or buyer that's creating these really choppy markets in the morning. It looks like a tug of war between good and evil, or the upside and the downside, the bulls and the bears. And that's exactly what it looks like every morning here for the last month. Again, overall, though, it seems to be closing up a little bit higher, even on those days it gets a little monkey hammered in the morning. But no less, kind of interesting things going on right now. And I think we're starting to see the beginnings of another leg up with precious metals. Perhaps we're going to get past that $25 mark and start moving closer to that $30 mark in silver here soon. And same thing with gold. I think we're going to move past that $2,000 mark pretty soon. Just seems that way. However, never underestimate the power of the people that have the printing press. Never underestimate the greed of people that run these markets, or casinos, I should call them. That's what comics is a big casino. That's why I always refer to it as a game, and I always refer to comics as a casino. And so it's the same SOS. However, it's, a friend of mine told me a long time ago that yeah, they can manipulate these markets, but they can only do it so long before it kind of falls to pieces on them. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with these people that have had these large short positions in silver. The big commercials, the 4 to 8 commercials, and the people that have kept silver down for so long, and probably the same thing exactly with gold as well, that they're kind of dying of a death by 1,000 cuts as well, because their attempt to hold these markets down, they keep losing money and keep losing money, and a little bit at a time, these markets keep edging up and edging up. But don't be confused that the people that are playing that market are making tons of money in other areas as well. This is just this is probably just play money for them in the silver markets, because it's such a small marketplace compared to other marketplaces. And let's take a look. Not much to talk about. It just seems the same pattern over and over and over for the last month. And speaking of same old lies too that we hear over and over and over. I'm going to talk about the Fed and what they're doing. It's like a broken record. I can repeat myself over and over how the Fed has jawboned these rate increases. They've jawboned the taper. What is the taper? The taper is what, 15 billion or something like that off the 100 and something billion that they already spend monthly. Oh, we're gonna spend $15 billion less in bonds. That's the taper, folks. I forget, they're spending over 100 billion, I think, buying bonds on a monthly basis. I think it's a monthly basis. However, they're going to reduce it by 15 billion. Give me a break. It's jawboning, folks. It's jawboning. And let me tell you, there's a lot of people say that these people are stupid. They're ruining our economy. They're ruining the you can say they are, but they did it a long time ago. The start of the ruin of the economy was the beginning of the Fed right here in 1913. And take a look at this consumer price index for all urban consumers, purchasing power of the consumer dollar in the average U.S. city. Well, take a look at this decline here. 1913, it was right exactly about the same time the U.S. Fed was created. And look what happens once we turned over our banking system, or once we turned over our finances to private fraudsters or private bankers. Take a look at this, whoomp, right there. Well, that's actually not too far off from the Depression, but prior to that, look, and you can't blame that on gold right there. Then take a look at this right here. This is the result of the Fed. Look at the buying power of the dollar. It drastically declines at that point, at the beginning of when the Fed starts. And I'm not quite sure why the data doesn't go back further than that. Maybe they just didn't collect data prior to that. Maybe the Fed is like the Big Bang Theory. Everything starts with the Fed. But no less, look at the decline of the value of the buying power of the dollar. And this is prior to the Depression, which is where, right here, 1929. I forget which month the Depression started in, but there's the Depression right there. And actually, they show it right here. They show it in what they call, these are probably recessions. I'm not sure what the gray lines are. I know on macro trends, those gray lines would indicate depressions or recessions. And that's probably what that is, actually, depression, recession. But no less, look at the decline in the value. No wonder we had a depression. Look at that. I mean, we lost a lot of buying power. And why was that? Is because we handed the power over to a bunch of private bankers. That's my opinion. And when did that happen? Let's see, the founding of the creation of the Federal Reserve System, the early 1900s. In 1907, a severe financial panic jolted Wall Street and forced several banks into failure. This panic, however, did not trigger a broad financial collapse, yet the simultaneous occurrence of general prosperity with a crisis in the nation's financial centers persuaded many Americans that their banking structure was sadly out of date. Right? This is how they do it, folks. They do it in fear. This is how people control large masses and groups of people. They do it through fear. This is exactly what they did in 1907 when they created. This whole article is kind of bullshit. I mean, it does give a timeline, but what they don't talk about is that private banks were trying to control the economy and trying to get control of the U.S. banking system for years and years. I mean, they wanted one central bank for a long time. They finally got their way in 1907 after, again, a financial panic, and it was a severe one. I don't know how long term it would have been. No less, they used fear to push in the Federal Reserve. Okay, and look what the buying power of the U.S. dollar has been since the Federal Reserves took over. Immediately after they took over, pretty much declined drastically. Okay, so. So the idea, let me read this here. In 1908, the Congress created the National Monetary Commission. So they were creeping closer to creating one central bank, all right? In 1912, the House Banking and Currency Committee held hearings to examine the control of the banking and financial resources of the nation. The committee concluded that America's banking and financial system were in the hands of money trusts. Another key event leading to the America's financial reform was the election of Woodrow Wilson as president in 1912. Wilson and Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan, want a little homework? Type that name in and type the word silver. Forcefully oppose any plan which concentrates controls in the hands of the bank. Okay, so there's a little pushback by William Jennings Bryan, and I think he's got an interesting story with silver. If you want to read about silver and type in the name William Jennings Bryan, it's kind of a cool story. We'll talk about that some other day, though. So he was forcefully, a lot of people were against having a central bank take over the finances of the United States, take over the dollar, more or less. What we did is, the Constitution said basically only Congress had the authority to coin money, all right? And there was an importance to that because our founding fathers knew how important it was to create sound money using gold and silver. And how did our founding fathers actually learn that lesson? Well, it was called shin plasters. And you know what a shin plaster was? Let me see if I can even get that up. I'll give you an idea. Shin plasters. And let's see if the definition comes up for that shin plaster. Here you go. A piece of paper money. Now, this is why our founding fathers, they were trying to fund a war at the time, and they created their own money, and they just kept printing it over and over and over till it became just kind of a worthless fiat. And as it says, a piece of money issued privately and devalued by inadequate security or by inflation. So our founding fathers knew about fiat. Oddly enough, again, they knew about fiat. They knew how to avoid the pitfalls and the traps of fiat currencies. That is why they put in our Constitution, only Congress shall have the right to coin money, okay? And it shall be in the form of gold and silver, because they knew exactly what happened. Let's take a look here and see if I can find a little story. And let's see. Shin plasters. All right, I'm not going to read this right here because, first off, I hate Wikipedia. Completely politicized to the left, in my opinion. But shin plasters, basically, it got the term shin plaster from, again, our founding fathers were funding a very expensive war against the British. You know what I mean? The British with the best military equipment, the biggest army, the biggest navy in the world. So they had to fund it somehow. So our founding fathers came up with the idea, again, creating a fiat currency. They didn't really realize that it was a fiat currency, but they created a currency, and then they just kept creating it more and more. It became eventually so worthless that soldiers that were lacking proper uniforms and that didn't have socks and proper shoes would take these notes and line them inside their socks to keep them warm. They would line them in their legs, in their stockings, to keep their legs warm. Hence the term, what? Shin plasters. All right, you can read more about that if you want. It's an interesting story. I learned it at a young age in life. So, hey, actually, I learned the value of money younger than most people did. Purchasing power of the consumer dollar in the average U.S. city. So, hey, here's when the Fed started out. As you see, here's your first depression right here, and it looks like the value of the dollar went up, and that's kind of a bit unexplainable to me. I'm not quite sure, but overall, since then, take a look at this line right here, and the value of the dollar is just kind of completely decreased. Now, remember one thing: this is a fact. This is a fact, and even our central bankers and even our Federal Reserve, Powell knows this. Even though they're jawboning everyone, remember they're jawboning. They're trying to keep people calm on a sinking ship, all right? And that's hard to do. It's when people are, again, I've said it many times, when you're ass deep in water, It's hard to, when the passengers of a huge cruise ship are in ass deep of water, it's hard to explain to them, hey, everything's okay. But the Fed has done a wonderful job of convincing the masses that the boat is, halfway sunk, and you are up to your ass in waters right here. But, we got it under control. Enjoy the dip. Enjoy the swim. That's exactly what we got going on right here. And another little interesting tidbit here is the United States is the longest surviving. Now, I understand someone mentioned that the British sterling might be. I'd have to do some research, but my understanding is that the U.S. dollar is the longest surviving fiat currency, not backed by anything in history right now. And that's when Nixon took us off the gold standard right about here. And you can actually see the deceleration of the buying power of the dollar here significantly after he's taken off the gold standard. Let's see, where else? There's 1933, when there's about 1930s. Let's see, 1933. When did FDR take us off the gold standard? Right about there. Oh, more bad things. Put it in the control of the central banks, the Federal Reserve, and here we go. But right about here is where you start to see the price of gold. I'd say right about here is where you start to see the price of, or where gold gets completely kicked to the side. The window is closed by Nixon. We truly became a Keynesian society right about this time, and again, our money wasn't backed anything. And just look how fast that line went down, next to nil. Again, we are the longest surviving fiat currency in history. The bankers know this. The country knows this. Smart economic people actually know this, but they're just not going to tell the masses, because what happens when you got the Titanic is half sunk, or the cruise ship is half sunk, and the passengers, which are the people of the world, or the people in this country who depend on the U.S. dollar, are they got water up to their chest now, okay, or their waist. I've said it different times, up to their neck or whatever it may be. And what's the Fed going to do? Is the Fed going to say, listen, folks, start getting out the lifeboats? Can you imagine the panic, and the dollar would just decelerate to absolutely zero? So really, the Fed has no choice but to lie to us, and that's a fact. They have no choice but to lie to us. Hence the problems that we're having in this country. On one hand, maybe they're just prolonging the sinking of the ship, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're just prolonging the sinking, but they're also prolonging the death of the passengers on that ship, okay? Because eventually, they're not telling anyone the truth. They're not telling people, listen, folks, this boat's going down. We're going to have to do a reset. We're going to have to do something. Because, again, they don't want people panicking and going into making their own choices. You know what I mean? They don't want people running into gold. They don't want people, if they have a reset, and not if, when and if they can create a proper reset, they just want to, as seamlessly as possible, have you go into that new economic system. And that's kind of where we're heading. I believe we're also heading to a cashless society, which is extremely dangerous to your liberties and your freedom. But remember, bankers don't care about liberty or freedom. It's pretty obvious the way they handled the 2020 pandemic that they don't. And it's, again, they don't care. They understand it, but they don't care. And your politicians and the officials in the media are just inept, in my opinion, and liars as well. So lies, lies, lies. That's all we get, lies and lies, all right? And then when we catch them in their lies, what do? They double down on stupid and just make more lies, or make the lie bigger. So that's the world we're living in a weird, weird world, folks. I don't know who's running the show. They're not doing a very good job of it, but they haven't been. Take a look at the line again. Who's been running the money show here? Look at the value of the dollar, the buying power of the dollar since we went off the gold standard. Just shit. Okay, gold's held its value. If you went back to 1913, you could have a $20 gold piece in your hand. All right, and that $20 U.S. gold coin has about 0.96 ounces, almost a full ounce of gold in it. And you could take that $20 gold piece at the time. Remember, the dollar had good value back then, okay? It's par value almost with the price of gold. So you could take that $20 bill that you had, the gold bill that you had in 1913, the gold certificate, or you could take the $20 gold coin, and you could go and buy for example, my understanding is you could buy a good man's suit. Was roughly about $20. I'm not talking about the best suits, but you could go to New York City probably in 1913 and buy yourself a really decent man suit for about $20 bill, 20 US dollars, again, which was the equivalent of a US ounce of gold. Now, let's fast forward to today. If you took that $20 bill and to try to buy any type of man suit, I don't think you could buy a pair of underwear with it. It's not going to work. It's not happening. However, take that same $20 gold piece, and let's just forget if it has any collector value, and it doesn't, okay? But let's just take that $20 gold piece, which has nearly an ounce of gold in it, which is nearly $2,000. You could still buy a damn nice suit for $2,000. So which has held its value very well? The U.S. dollar or gold? And take a look at the chart. It's obvious as hell, folks. You're being lied to. You're being lied to every day. Wow. And by the way, interesting timeline here. You can read this. I'm going to go real slow so I don't make some of you puke up your coffee. There we go. Oh, that is the top of the page. How did that get to be the top of the page? It doesn't look like it is. All right. Sorry about that. Can't show you. So anyway, really more or less, as far as global currencies, global fiat currencies, it's just a matter of who is the last horse to the glue factory. That's what all these central banks are competing for, is to be the last horse to the glue factory. You have to wonder, we know that the central bankers of the United States, the Federal Reserve people, are pretty damn smart. They're not stupid by any means. They've been able to keep this house of cards up, the Jenga game. Somehow they've been able to, even though there's no blocks at the bottom of the Jenga tower, I don't know how they managed to keep it up. Maybe there's one block there we just don't see. But really, it's a matter of world currencies. The last horse of the glue factory is who's going to survive. And I believe that the Fed is going to be the one that does a digital dollar, and they try to do the reset themselves. And as I told you before, the reset involves fear. The reset involves fear, creating fear. For example, whether it's viruses or whether it's economic situations, whether it's riots, whether it's crime, whether it's war, they create fear. And as long as they have the populace in fear, they can pretty much do whatever they want. It's easy to manipulate fearful people. There's no doubt about that. Just read anything in psychology; it'll tell you about that. So more or less, I think we're being pushed and going to be pushed into a cashless society. Cryptos being the foot in the door, more or less, to get the young people used to it, because they're the ones that are going to have to deal with it more than us older folks. So cryptos being the foot in the door. But again, cryptos are going to. Governments hate competition. They're going to get rid of cryptos and they're going to create their own. So, they're going to. And how will they get people to accept it? They'll give it out for free. And who doesn't take free dollars? And it'll work with the poor and the poor voters, and it'll also work with the lower middle class voters who, when the Fed sends them their digitized dollars in their account, are going to say, hey man, I just paid my electric bill with that or whatever. What's not to like if they keep handing me money? They buy your votes, folks, and they buy your confidence, and they use fear to do it. Let's move along from here. You know my opinion on that. Speaking of fear, all right, speaking of cryptos, as I said, governments and bankers, especially bankers run the world. They're Oz. They're the guy behind the curtain, or the person behind the. Nowadays, I better say person, or hold on. What's the proper pronoun for that? They're the he, she, it. They're the he, she, it of it. Okay, proper word. The Fed is. They're the she, he, it's of power. They run the whole world. They're the she, he, it behind the curtain. Or maybe we can just say Oz. Oz is a good pronoun. They're the Oz. They run the whole world. And governments kind of bow to them more or less and do what they want. Okay. So as I've said, cryptos, in my opinion, are a foot in the door for a cashless society. And governments hate competition. And the end goal of the crypto was to introduce it, get people to used to it and like it, and then to introduce their own form of money. And people say, well, that's a huge conspiracy, Brian. That's a huge conspiracy. How could that possibly be true? I mean, how could we? The truth is it is a huge conspiracy on my part. However, it's a national emergency for these people, and it's a national emergency for the Fed, and the Fed can create the fear for the government to make it think it's a national emergency, and they could do a lot behind the scenes under the guise, well, if we hadn't of created Bitcoin, we hadn't convinced people and fooled people into buying into a digital fiat, then the whole system would have collapsed and everyone would have starved and everyone would have died. That's how they do it, folks. And again, they use fear, and then they roll in the bullshit that keeps them in power and makes sure that they continue making money. But crypto, House sends, the big bipartisan infrastructure bill that just went in. I wonder how many people that are in the crypto market realize that what they slipped into it. The U.S. House Representatives, now this is on CoinDesk, ready? U.S. House sends infrastructure bill crypto tax provision to the U.S. President. All right, crypto guys, remember I was telling you that this was going to happen at some point? Well, here you go. The U.S. House of Representatives voted to pass a bipartisan infrastructure bill that contains a controversial crypto tax reporting requirement. The House voted in favor of the bill with at least 218 yeas late Friday night, fulfilling a key priority for the Biden administration. By the way, who were those Republicans that said yes? Freaking idiots, my opinion. Amid controversy over whether an accompanying Democratic-led bill would also move forward, the Senate originally passed the bill in August, with lawmakers shot down any attempt to amending the crypto provision. But it's there now, folks, and it's waiting for the president to sign it. The crypto industry was concerned about a tax reporting requirement within the bill that sought to expand the definition of a broker for internal revenue service purposes. The reporting requirement would see all brokers report transactions under the current code. And basically this means that, I'll read the rest of it, it's not that much. Industry proponents worried that the definition would be too broad, capturing entities like miners and other parties that don't facilitate transactions. Look, industry proponents. Who are these industry proponents in the crypto world? These are the JP Morgans now. These are the financial institutions that are running the crypto markets, folks. And they're okay with you getting screwed by IRS definitions, but they want to make sure that certain things, miners and other parties like themselves, don't have to really worry about it. Another provision included in the bill is to amend tax code section blah, 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 has also stoked fear in the crypto industry. The law, written nearly 40 years ago, now this is the cash reporting law for $10,000. They're slipping this on you crypto folks as well, to apply in-person cash transactions over $10,000. Requires recipients to verify the sender's personal information, record his social security number, the nature of the transaction, and other information, and report the transaction to the government within 15 days. These are 8,300 forms, folks. We've been around. The 8,300 forms started during the 1980s under the bullshit, fearful drug wars. Remember? Oh my God, everyone's going to be a drug addict, and drug neighborhood's going to be in my backyard, and my kids are going to be drug addicts. Everyone's going to get. All right. Well, it's gotten that level a little bit, but not as bad. They made it so fearful, and really they changed nothing as far as the drugs go. The 8,300 form reporting says anything over $10,000 cash transaction that a vendor, yourself, banks, whoever, have to fill out what they call an 8,300 form on you. Again, they didn't care about drug dealers, folks. We found out years later that most of these banks and these people were dealing with profiting from drug money. Okay, so it wasn't about drug money. The 8,300 cash reporting law for $10,000 was to make sure that you had no privacy in your personal financial life, and that they would know every fucking dime that you bought and sold. And they had to put it at $10,000 because at the time in 1980s, $10,000 was quite a bit more money. So it's not dissimilar to the recent $600 deal that they were trying to stick into this infrastructure bill, where everything you did over $600 in your bank account was reported. Folks, they are trying to make sure that you have no privacy in your financial life whatsoever. They're doing this in the form of trying to turn it into a cashless society. This is dangerous. I would prefer to stick with the fiat dollar bill. I'd rather stick with the fiat dollar bill for the privacy reasons and for the reasons that these bastards are trying to steal your money from you. And if you got it any kind of cashless form, if you got it in a crypto account, if you got it in a bank account, they're going to take it from you. They're going to find a way to take it from you. It's a bad thing. If you got it cash in your pocket, here, the upside to the U.S. fiat dollar bill is that if you got it in your pocket, they got to come fucking take it from you. All right. So as much as I'm against fiat dollar bills, I'm even more against cryptos. I'm even more against the cashless society because it's there to fuck you. It's not there to help you. Okay, God, I guess I kind of made my point here. And as far as, let's go here, how long, oh, God, speaking of lies, more lies. My man, he don't even know me. He don't know me from Shinola. But Matthew Peipenberg via goldswitzerland.com. I have no idea what they do, but if you live in their, I'm a big local guy. If you live in their local area, God, if I lived near goldswitzerland.com, I'm not quite sure if they sell physical gold or paper gold. Either way, just because their articles are so good, I'd walk into their store or their office and buy something from them. Matthew Peipenberg pretty much hits these things on the head. Listen, we'll be here a long time if I read this. So do me a favor, for my smart listeners out there, my smart viewers, bookmark this. It's on ZH. You can go here, How Long Can Lies and Control Supplant Reality in Free Markets? It's by Tyler Durden. You can also click their site and see it. Done by Matthew Peipenberg. Excellent, excellent assessment. Basically, I'm on the exact same page as this gentleman here when it comes to my thought processes and how I view the governments, how I view central bankers, excuse me, and how I view the markets in general. It's becoming harder to keep up with the increasingly downgraded GDP. There's so many good things in this article that, oh, hey, sorry about that. I highly recommend that you read this. This is one of the things, if you're new to my videos, I'd like to give out homework here because I'd love to be able to read every single one of these articles to you. But we would be here for hours and hours, and you'd probably get bored with me. Read at your own speed. Again, great articles, How Long Can Lies and Control Supplant Reality in Free Markets, in Zero Hedge, authored by Matthew Peipenberg. Superb article, one of my recommend must-read deals of the day, or the week if you get a chance here. GATA.org, not a lot of news out here. Ed Steer, decent rallies in silver and gold at the end of the week. Nothing new there as far as what we haven't discussed already. If meal, there's a spelling mistake. If metal, it's supposed to be metals. This got me by surprise. If metals are breaking, it's supposed to. If meals are breaking out, I was thinking, oh my God, the meals are breaking out. You don't want the calandra. Oh gosh, God, don't mess with my meals. You mess with my metals, but don't mess with my meals. James Turk at King World has the long run of ride. I love James Turk. I've been reading him for years and years and years. But he is a perma bull. He's been saying next week for double and triple silver and gold for the longest time. But eventually even a broken clock is right. Twice a day. That's not a diss on James Turk either. I'd say he's one of the top cheerleaders and supporters of precious metals, and he's also talked about the blatant manipulation for years as well. So a lot of respect to James Turk. Probably a good article as well. I'm sure it's a lot of the stuff that we've covered here already. If you're new to my, if you're new to my videos and you're new to stacking in general, you must have GATA.org on your bookmark bar. Otherwise, you just aren't getting it right. Aren't or ain't. I'll use ain't. You just ain't getting it right. Let's move over to another homework for you. Man, I'm giving you two homeworks today. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me, peeps. But another excellent article by Charles Hugh Smith. He kind of delves more into the economic, political side of it. Doesn't talk about precious metals. But remember, economics and politics, if you're a stacker and you love silver, and you're just reading silver articles, and you don't like politics, you have to remember politics, and who likes politics? These people are despicable. You know what I'm saying? They really are for the most part, but you have to watch them. You have to follow them, and you have to stay involved, because if you don't stay involved, you get what we have today, a shit show. Again, that's my opinion. Good article by Charles Hugh Smith. Highly recommend you read it. 8 reasons why scarcities will increase rather than evaporate. Again, it talks about what we're looking here in the technocratic fantasy mindset. I love this guy, the way he words stuff too. His vocabulary is wonderful. Any deposit anywhere on the planet is accessible to high-tech processes. And he talks about the end of us being able to raid the rest of the world for cheap commodities. It's over, folks. It's over. The cost of living is if you an adult right now, or you're old enough to remember these times, it's the end of these times. We're not going to see these prices ever again. It's like looking back on the 1970s, when gas was, 50 cents a gallon. You could still buy a Coke for a quarter or something like that, pack of cigarettes for $1, whatever the frick it was. We're going to look at these times like we look at the 70s right now, but that's to be expected in a fiat-driven world, driven by moronic officials and politicians and greedy bankers. Wall Street silver out there doing some cool stuff still. I'm going to do a quick refresh, see if there's anything I can talk about here, and let's do it. By the way, Wall Street Silver, if you watch my videos, you're not on here, I'd say you subscribe. They got the greatest freaking memes. Who does memes on gold and silver? I mean, in my 40 years of doing this, I've never seen comedy or memes on gold and silver. It's kind of interesting to watch. And the enthusiasm out here is just off the top, over the top, I should say. The difference between 1980 and 2021. Here's an interesting meme. In 1980, there were only two brothers, and they bought silver margin, and the banksters knew. In 2021, we have 165,000 apes, and we own silver stacks, and the banksters fear. Well, it's funny, but I don't think the bankers fear anything really. Again, the silver market, guys, is such. These bankers, these commercial bankers, and JP, you got to realize how small the silver market is. It's extreme when you compare it to any other markets out there, especially equities and bond market and currency markets and some other commodity markets as well. The silver market is tiny, tiny, tiny. It doesn't take much to move the silver. It doesn't take much of that Wall Street money to move silver. I'd say that less than 1% of 1% of Wall Street bonds, equity, that money in Wall Street, so to speak, investment money, less than 1% of 1% of world investment money is probably in silver, period. So it doesn't take much for these big whales to go in there, these big banksters, commercial banksters to go in there and move these markets around, manipulate them for their purposes, not for hedging, but not even for speculation, simply just because they can. This is what we've got going on with gold and silver markets, highly manipulated, not because they're speculators, again, just because they're such small marketplaces and they can monkey. They're the 800-pound gorilla. They can monkey their way through any of this stuff. So folks, the banksters are the 800-pound gorillas out there. Don't ever think you're going to be able to beat them by themselves. But with that said, the power of this, the power of the Wall Street silver folks out there, the real power is this right here, 165,000 people. Now, even if you had 200,000 people and everyone bought a 1,000-ounce bar, maybe my math is a little bit off here, but which is highly unlikely. The average Joe out there can't buy a 1,000-ounce bar. But 165,000 people, the value of Wall Street silver is not so much how much silver they can take off the market, and that's important. Don't get me wrong, that's important. But bringing attention to the silver market, keeping that attention up to the silver market, letting these people know that we know what they're doing. This is way more important than all the silver the apes can buy. And trust me, I'm absolutely correct on this. So the importance of this website is not how much, the real importance of this website is not how much silver they can buy, not how much silver they can take off the street. I mean, it would be if I felt they could do a significant amount, but again, you're dealing with, people that deal in billions and trillions, folks. You're not dealing with, Joe Blow bankster at the local Union Bank, okay? You're dealing with trillions of dollars here, billions of dollars. They can, they're the 800-pound gorillas. You're not going to beat them on that end of it, but you will beat them by continually, advertising, not advertising, but continually putting the word out how they cheat the market, how they screw people. You trust me, you keep putting this out, that'll destroy them faster than all the silver you can take off the market. And again, as I said, I've always hoped that I'd like to see the WSS people do a very civil, professional call-in program where they get their members, even if they got half their members or a quarter of their members, to call legislators, to call the CME group, and call COMEX, and just register your complaints, how they screwed you, how they've screwed the small silver and gold investor for years and years and years, and miners. Just call to let them know. I'd love to see Wall Street Silver do that independently, Again, civilly and professionally, I think that would add tremendous power and promote Wall Street silver, and they'd get tremendous amount of press from it as well. Boy, I'd love to run that program for them. Well, let's move into the end of the show. Hey, thanks for watching. This is Brian Kuzma with Commercial Rare Coins. I advertise to be APMEX S&M. I advertise to be APMEX, SD Bullion, and JM Bullion. Okay, the big online guys. And we're local here. We only deal local in South Florida. So if you live in my area, we're open 10 to 4, Mondays through Fridays. Happy to give you the best deal we can. Plus, unlike those guys, we can give you good personal service, face-to-face, and good advice as well. Plus, you got my videos every day, too. And if you don't live in my area, we really can't deal with you because we don't ship at all, folks. It's just not our business model. We are local brick and mortar. However, as you know me, I am always pushing you to go out there and find a good local business for your precious metals or your coins or whatever you do. I can't stress how important it is to keep that money local. Once you ship your money, whether it's tires or silver bars or whatever, Amazon, once you ship your money to out of state, out of your region, it's gone. It's never coming back likely. There's no payoff for you. Try to deal with local businesses only. We need to go back to being local and working in our local communities and buying from our local business people. Even if it costs us a tiny bit more, it comes back to you tenfold. Trust me on this. Well, that's it. Going to end it at this. Have a great day. Looking forward to tomorrow's show. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps me know who's watching and how much you care. Hey, thanks again. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.